The house was quiet when they arrived. No shouting, no movement, just the low hum of a refrigerator somewhere in the background. Authorities stood inside the living room, careful with their steps, as if the space itself deserved respect. Family photos lined the walls, a couch that had been sat on every evening, a coffee mug left exactly where someone had placed it hours earlier. Nothing looked out of place. That was the first thing everyone noticed. This was a home where mornings had started on time, where bills were paid, where neighbors waved as they passed by. There were no warning signs in the hallway, no marks on the walls, no sense that anything here had ever gone wrong. The people standing inside that house had seen countless scenes before, but this one felt different, because everything about it felt familiar. The kind of place you pass every day without remembering, the kind of life people trust without question. Someone quietly closed a door down the hall. Another took notes without speaking. And in that silence, a realization settled in. Whatever had come to light hadn't disrupted his life, it had revealed it. For years, this home had been the definition of ordinary, and now, ordinary felt impossible to understand. The most unsettling part wasn't what they found, it was how normal everything looked before. For nearly 3 decades, his life followed a rhythm no one questioned. Mornings began the same way, an alarm at the same time, coffee prepared without rushing, quiet conversation across the kitchen counter. His wife knew these routines by heart, the way he read the news, the way he checked his watch before leaving, the brief smile before he picked up his keys. There was comfort in that repetition. He drove the same roads each day, stopped at the same intersections, arrived at work on time, left on time, returned home without explanation because none was needed. Errands filled the spaces in between, groceries, dry cleaning, quick stops that turned into short conversations with people who knew his name. Evenings were quiet, dinner at home more often than not, television playing softly in the background, phones put away, lights turned off at a reasonable hour. Weekends felt familiar too. Yard work in the morning, casual plans in the afternoon, occasional visits with friends or neighbors who dropped by without calling first. Nothing dramatic, nothing secretive, nothing that demanded attention. This was the kind of life people described as stable, the kind they used as an example. Normality has a powerful effect. It lowers questions, it softens curiosity. When days look the same long enough, they begin to feel honest by default. And so trust settled in quietly, year after year. Nothing stood out, and that's exactly why no one looked closer. He wasn't just a husband, he was a neighbor people felt comfortable calling, someone who held doors open, returned borrowed tools, checked in when someone was sick. Short conversations turned into familiar exchanges, names remembered, faces greeted with the same calm expression every time. At work, he was dependable, not loud, not demanding, just consistent. Tasks completed without complaint, deadlines met, pressure handled quietly. When things went wrong around him, he didn't react strongly. He listened, he waited, he spoke when it mattered. That steadiness became part of how people described him. He's solid, you can count on him, he never changes. In moments that made others uncomfortable, he remained composed. In situations that tested patience, he stayed even. People noticed that. Calm creates confidence. Confidence creates belief. And belief, once formed, protects itself. When questions surfaced, small ones, passing ones, there was always an explanation ready. And those explanations sounded reasonable because they always had. Nothing felt forced, nothing felt rushed, so people filled in the gaps for him. They assumed the best. They defended the familiar. If doubt ever appeared, it didn't last long, because it's difficult to question someone who fits so easily into every role. Would you have trusted him? People weren't just comfortable around him, they defended him. Even the most familiar lives carry small edges that don't quite align. At first, they don't feel important. They appear ordinary, easy to dismiss. There was a room in the house that stayed closed, not locked in a dramatic way, just private. It was described casually: storage, old paperwork, things that didn't matter anymore. No one pressed for more. Homes have rooms like that, spaces that hold clutter instead of conversation. Then there were habits he never talked about: short walks taken alone, time spent awake when the house was quiet, moments where he seemed present but distant. Nothing alarming, nothing that demanded confrontation. His wife noticed these things in passing, not as warnings, as curiosities. She asked once, lightly. He answered without hesitation: work stress, fatigue, a need for quiet. The explanations made sense because they fit the life they already shared. Distance, when it appears slowly, feels different. It blends into routine. It wears the shape of responsibility. People under pressure change, after all. They withdraw. They focus inward. That's what she told herself. That's what others believed too. Because stability encourages interpretation, not investigation. When something feels uncomfortable, the mind searches for the safest reason to explain it. We explain away discomfort to protect what feels stable. And so, the details were filed away quietly, not forgotten, just postponed. At the time, it meant nothing. Later, it would mean everything. Every routine, no matter how steady, depends on timing. Morning follows night, work follows breakfast, evenings return to the same rooms. That rhythm had held for years, until one day it didn't. It wasn't a dramatic change, no raised voices, no sudden absence, just a detail that refused to settle. A date came up in conversation, mentioned casually, then mentioned again, slightly differently. The shift was small, so small it almost slipped past, but small differences linger when everything else stays the same. Later, a statement echoed back in a new context. The words matched, the timing didn't. He explained it easily. A meeting ran late, traffic slowed everything, plans overlapped. His tone never wavered, his posture stayed relaxed, but inside the house, something felt altered. Not broken, not exposed, just strained. His wife noticed the space between answers, the pause before a reply, the way conversations ended sooner than before. Trust doesn't collapse all at once. It stretches, quietly. She didn't accuse, she adjusted. She listened more closely. She watched the clock without meaning to. Stability teaches people to doubt their own instincts first. So she did. Until that night. That night, he said he was somewhere else. The timeline disagreed. The reveal did not arrive with raised voices. There was no confrontation, no dramatic moment. It arrived as a detail, a small one, something written down years ago and never questioned. A date that had always existed but had never been compared to anything else. For decades, his story stayed the same. Where he went, what he did, who he was with. It was familiar, reassuring, repeated often enough to feel permanent. But when that date was placed next to another record, something shifted. Not loudly, quietly. The two timelines could not exist together. Both couldn't be true. And yet, for 27 years, no one noticed the overlap. The realization didn't bring clarity, it brought discomfort. Because if this detail was wrong, then something else might be wrong too. His wife replayed the memory tied to that date, the weather, the time of day, the reason he gave for being away. It all still sounded right. That was the problem. The explanation hadn't changed, only the context had. And suddenly, the normal life that once felt solid began to feel carefully arranged, not staged, just maintained. From that moment on, the normal life didn't look the same. When trust weakens, memory changes, not because the past moves, but because perspective does. Conversations once forgotten returned with new weight. A pause that felt insignificant before, a sentence that ended too cleanly, a smile that arrived a moment late. None of it proved anything. That was the most unsettling part. There was still nothing obvious, just patterns. Patterns that had always existed, they simply hadn't been connected. Timelines were re-examined, not with urgency, but with care. Each event placed beside another, each explanation held up to quiet scrutiny. And again, the same result appeared: plausible, consistent, incomplete. For his wife, the shift was emotional before it was logical. She felt distance where closeness once lived, not absence, but restraint. Questions formed but stayed unspoken, because asking them would change everything. Trust doesn't vanish all at once. It loosens, it hesitates, it waits. And in that waiting, doubt grows. The truth wasn't hidden, it was overlooked. Normal was always the goal, a shared home, predictable days, familiar patterns. Normal meant safe, normal meant known. But normal is not the same as understood. As the pieces rearranged, the meaning of his life shifted, not because of a single act, not because of a clear answer, but because of accumulation. Years of sameness now felt curated. Repetition no longer felt accidental. Normal, she realized, can exist without transparency. It can function smoothly, convincingly. It can pass through decades without interruption. What once felt comforting now carried distance, not fear, recognition. The house was the same, the routines continued, but familiarity no longer brought ease. It brought questions. What once felt safe now felt unfamiliar. The aftermath didn't offer relief. There was no single truth that tied everything together, no explanation that made the years make sense. For his wife, the consequences were personal and constant. Every shared memory carried a question. Every routine felt unfamiliar. Even silence changed its meaning. What once felt peaceful now felt empty. She questioned herself more than him. Why she trusted without hesitation, why she accepted what felt ordinary, why she didn't listen to moments of unease. In the community, disbelief lingered longer than anger. People searched for reassurance in each other. They compared memories, shared stories, defended what they thought they knew. He was always there. He never caused problems. He was dependable. Those statements didn't disappear, they echoed, and each echo carried guilt, because recognizing the signs afterwards didn't undo ignoring them before. There was no clean ending, just fractured understanding, and still one question refused to fade. Trust is not something we give once, we give daily, in small ways, through repetition, through familiarity, through the comfort of routine. We trust what doesn't challenge us, what blends into our lives, what feels easy to explain. In this story, nothing demanded urgency,
That's why it endured. Normal is not always the absence of risk. Sometimes it is the cover. And when normal lasts long enough, it becomes unquestioned. So the question is not only about him, it's about everyone who stood nearby. Did he live a normal life for 27 years, or did everyone else help define that normal for him? In episode 3, we examine the signs people defended, the ones that felt harmless at the time. If you have a theory, share it. If this story made you question something familiar, stay with us. Subscribe for the next chapter, because this story isn't finished.